So to recap, today, sometime me I root for you and sometime me I wonder, huh? So you told them, including your son, that you're going for a visit of which you know in your mind you ain't coming back. All right. So the last time we saw Sedella and Mr. Taddy, things did hot, 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 hot. I know we needed to simmer down. So let's continue, all right? Nesta was now a teenager with his own life. I was working at the bar, that's Mr. Taddy's bar, and he was attending the model school. He had his own little ups and downs, like any teenage boy. Was anyway a good part of the time gallivanting about town with his friends. He had become caught up in the rough and tumble life of Kingston mean streets, and every now and again something would happen to him that would scare her half to death. One afternoon, for example, a tough looking street boy swaggered into the bar and said nonchalantly to me, "Lady, you have a son named Nesta." "Yes," I said, my heart leaping into my throat. "He got a chop over an eye." "What? Where is he?" I stammered. Or what? Where is he? I stammered. "He done at the school," the boy said indifferently. Then he wandered out of the bar as if all he had said was civil good afternoon. Frantic, I asked Mr. Anderson, my neighbor who had a shop next door, to keep an eye on the bar, telling him that my son was hurt and I had to go to him. Then I raced out into the hot, dirty streets of Kingston to find Nesta. I ran down to the school and found some ragged street boys perched on a wall surrounding the schoolyard. When they saw me coming, one of them cried, "Babylon!" Yo, yo, I'm sorry. That was funny. One of them, I'm sorry. One of them, Babylon. Hold on, I got it. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. I finally got myself together. Which then and now is the nickname Jamaicans use for police or authority. At this, most of the boys scattered like wild birds over the wall and flew into the buildings of the school. One of them, however, just slouched against the wall and eyed me cockily. "You know a boy named Nesta Marley?" I asked. Oh, no, sorry. I thought that was the boy. That's the mom. "You know a boy named Nesta Marley?" I asked him. "Me don't know anybody by that name," he mumbled suddenly. I didn't believe him, so I nosed my way around the stained back of the school building, only to glimpse Nesta among the pack of boys who scampered off when they saw me coming. I couldn't catch up with them, so I returned to the bar, telling myself that Nesta couldn't be badly hurt, or he wouldn't have run away. So Nesta was in the pack of boys that hollered Babylon and ran off. Yo, that was funny. Anyway, later on, he came to the bar and stood outside on the sidewalk, too ashamed to enter. Glimpsing him, I rushed out into the street. "What you doing out here?" I asked him. "Come here, let me see the cut." He came over hesitantly and showed me a band-aid plaster over his eye. "What happened?" I asked, examining the wound. He said that one of his friends had thrown a stone and chopped him over an eye, but that it would have been an accident. "So why you run from me then?" I challenged. "Because, mama," he said, "me think say you da get vexed when you see me head bleed and call police pon the boy, and him no mean to do it." I said, "Oh." It was all I could think of to say. The gash from the stone had missed his eye by about 2 inches. But when you lived among the wanton wickedness of Kingston, not the wanton wickedness of Kingston, you learn to be thankful for all of Jah mercies, no matter how small or accidental. One evening, Nesta came home from school singing a song. "I went into a garden alone while the dew was still on the roses." I don't know how the melody go. "And the voice I heard linger in my ear." I was stunned at how well he sang, of course. Nesta had always been a singing child. even when he were living in Stepney. But this was the first time I can remember being struck by his beautiful singing voice. I called out to him, "You know, Nesta, that song is very nice." "You like it, Mama?" he asked, pleased at my response. Then he sat in the small drawing room and sang the entire song for me and me alone. The first time he had ever done that, he was about 14 years old. He said it was a Pat Boone song he'd heard on the radio. When he was finished giving me a private concert, I could only marvel. "My goodness gracious, Nesta." Looking pleased, he gave me a big smile and strolled into his bedroom humming. So anyway, one evening when he was about 15, the way Sedella be telling these ages, he was about 4 or 5. That means she don't remember the party. So one evening when he was about 15, Nesta came home from school lugging a big pile of textbooks. Usually when he returned home from school, he would carry only one book for homework or be empty-handed. "What happened?" I asked him. "Why you carry home all of your books?" "Mama," he said, "this school closed down. The headmistress tell us that she going back to the country. She lock up everything." He said he'd brought the books home to give to a friend who was still attending school. I sighed. "All right then." I said, "If that be the case, we'll have to go find you a trade." He said yes. Then he went up to his bedroom to strum his guitar, leaving me wondering what would become of him now. After that, he began to take his music seriously. I would hear him in his bedroom strumming and practicing. Sometimes Desmond Decker would come over, and two of them would start jamming together in the bedroom, making the small house ring with joyful song. Often, Nesta would go over to Bunny Livingston's house, aka Toddy Yard, and they would practice there. I would also hear them rehearsing at Mr. Toddy's house. So where, unless Bunny's living with his mother, Miss Maggie, I would assume that, I don't know, I'm confused about the living arrangements. Nesta began to get little gigs in bars around town, and he and Bunny and others would sometimes team up and play as a small band. They would practice before and after a session, helping each other master a tune or play it better. Much of his rehearsing and playing took place on the fringes of my own busy life, which was still taken up with trying to earn bread and butter for me and Nesta and keep a roof over our heads. And as a single mother, who I don't know if she's still in the toxic relationship, she may be, this is her primary concern ever since coming from country, right? Near the bar where I worked, I had bought a little restaurant from an Indian woman and put my sister Rose, we have the same father. She had to put that part because we know about Omariah by this time, right? To run it for me. And for a while, the little restaurant prospered. So your sister Della always a try her hand. She's a trying woman. You can't fight her upon that. She's a trying woman. It says here, being in the bar business, I was also meeting a lot of people daily, and I would sometimes tell them about my son, who was looking to learn a trade, and ask their advice. One day a man informed me about a welding business on South Camp Road that took in apprentices and taught them the trade of welding. You know, somebody asked me, "Amuna, when you gonna go back to No Woman No Cry, Rita Marley?" When Rita Marley's story converges with this story, she would say, "Oh, he went to welding school," but people don't know how he got into welding school. And his mother brings us up to that point, and I think it is important. So, because no man is an island, right? We all get here by different circumstances. So I think it's interesting to give the background of the story. One day, a man informed me about a welding business on South Camp Road that took in apprentices and taught them the trade of welding. I hurried home that evening and told Nesta, and he went to the place the next day and got on as an apprentice welder. So he didn't necessarily drop out of school, according to the story. His headmaster, she leaves, and so now he's going to go get gainful employment. On the side, he continued doing his music business with Bunny, and sometimes he would help me in the restaurant. One morning, I told him to open up and sweep until I came, and he left early to do it. A little while later, as I was on my way to join him, I spied him across the crowded street. He was hurrying in the opposite direction from the restaurant. Nesta no follow instruction. Miss Senegal shop fi go sweep and wipe and tidy
Island
up fi
Twist
open.
follows Jackie
And now
Brown, a
Miss
young
Spied you
girl
a
who finds
cut across the
herself
street.
head over
Where
heels
is
for the
Nesta
new
going?
island boy
Let us
at
pause.
school
Take a
in
brief commercial
fresh
break
outer
and
yard,
find out
and
where
Jackie has
Nesta
the
was going.
fever.
Where you going,
But as
Nesta?
she navigates the ups and downs of her new crush, things quickly spiral out of control when her not so secret admirer becomes determined to sabotage her relationship. So check out the new novel Island Twist over on Amazon today. Now back to the story.
Nesta, what happened? I called to him across the jam-packed Kingston Street. Mama, he said breathlessly, darting across the street, dodging into smoky, noisy traffic. They brought the restaurant. We went and made a report to the police, and a constable came to inspect the premises. The lock on the back door had been ripped off. Inside, all the beer, cigarette, and soft drink were gone. Merciful Father. Everything that could be moved was missing. I was so upset and vexed to see all my hard work gone down the drain that I swore to sleep in the restaurant that night to personally protect my property. Nesta offered to stay that night with me, so I carried pillow. I can't. She told her one of security. So tell her say, Mother Buka. She said, I sleep, I go sleep right here so today. But if they gone with everything, no, it no matter. So I carried pillows and bedding to the restaurant. And after we had served the last customer and closed for the night, I had made up two places for us to sleep on the floor under the counter. As Nessa and I were settled down for the night, a friend of mine peered in through the window and gaped with amazement. Whoa! At the sight of me and Nesta huddled under the counter, trying to get comfortable. She rapped on the window to be admitted. I unlocked the door and let her in. Miss Marley, she asked, looking horror-stricken as she entered the dimly lit shop. What you doing? What you going to do? Sleep here? Yes, I said angrily. Them not going to break my restaurant that I work so hard to keep up and thief out all of my goods just like that. Miss Molly, you crazy? If thief broke in your place tonight and you and Nesta are here, what you think them are gonna do? Kill you and your one pitney? That's what they want will do. Kill you. With a sinking heart, I realized that she was right. What I was doing was not just reckless, given the known viciousness of Kingston thieves, it was stupid. No, Miss Molly, she counseled. You leave the little place and carry your one pitney home. Smart advice. Nesta, meanwhile, was crouched on the bedding spread out under the counter, peering up at us intently, listening to every word. I glanced down at him and sighed. Come, Nesta, I said heavily. Come, make we lock up and leave it. Money no worth life. And that is a fact. Right? You can buy back restaurant, you can buy back life. And the next week, even though I had changed the lock and barred the windows, the thief broke in again into the restaurant and clean. I was sneaking suspicion, said, the thief know who you are, because this is strange. Them never broke the bar next door, them broke the restaurant. Me just I say. Downhearted, I sold the little restaurant to my brother John, who planned to avoid break-ins by staying open all night. John said me have something for them. It seemed that no matter what little thing I tried to help myself, Kingston and his wicked ways were just determined to humbug up my life. So let's continue. Fast forward a little bit. So it says, we went on. Every morning I packed a little lunch for Nesta and he left early to learn the welder's trade. After he was gone, I'd get ready and head for my own job working behind the counter of the bar. Nesta would usually reach home before I did in the evenings. Sometimes he would cook dinner for both of us and leave a plate for me on the stove. Sometimes he would be away playing a gig at some club, and I would arrive late at night to empty house or to find Mr. Taddy waiting in the drawing room for my company. Mr. Taddy have three women, a wife and picnic, and Mr. Taddy cock up around at your drawing room and wait for company. It says here, where am I? Where am I? But no matter where Nesta was playing, every night would eventually find him home in his own bed. At the bar, I began to hear encouraging words about Nesta and his music. One evening, a man named Derek Morgan came in to have a drink. He was then active in ska music scene in Kingston, and after he learned who I was, he said to me, "You know, lady, you have a son who's very talented." "Oh, yes," I said. "He has a lot of potential," he said, wiping his mouth. I thanked him for the words of encouragement and praise. Similar remarks would sometimes come my way from the nightlife people who would occasionally drift into the bar. So me could see what Nesta going with. Because if I'm not mistaken, he meets Peter Tosh at this welding job. So let's continue. Nesta was still doing the music only on the side and concentrating on learning to be a welder, which seemed to be a more practical and steady line of work. But one evening, he came home in pain, complaining of something in his eye. Apparently that day, there hadn't been enough goggles at the plant for all the apprentices, and he had tried welding without any eye protection. Something sharp had flown up from the shower of welding sparks and pierced his eye. He begged me to try and get it out. So some people wonder why he left the welding apprenticeship. Something juke him in an eye. I sat him down on a chair to a lamp, leaned his head back. You know how that be. Hold head, man, let me see. Hold head, hold head. You know, that's the nice version of I tried to peer into his eye, right? So you peel out in your eyeball for see. Peeling his eyelids wide open, I told you, with my fingers. Hold me eye, man, hold me eye. I could see something stuck in the white of his eye. Oh, hush, hush, hush. But when I brushed at it with a ball of cotton, it wouldn't move. "You see it, mama?" he asked Winston. "Yes, but it now move when me touch it." "Try again, it pain me bad." I tried, but it was no use. Whatever he had in his eye had punctured the white jelly, where it lay deeply buried. He said that some men at the welding plant had told him to put a cold towel on it, which I did, and he went into his bedroom and stayed there in the darkness because the eye injured couldn't stand any light. All night from early evening he was in his room, and sometimes I would hear him moaning softly. Eventually, he fell asleep. No, I forgot doctor, man. The next day I took him to the hospital, same thing, where a doctor worked on his eye and removed a piece of a metal splinter. That must have hurt. But he told us that a piece was still left in the eye and he should come back tomorrow. The nurse put a patch over the eye and sent us home to return the next day. Nestor was still in pain. I made him dinner and gave him some bush tea to drink. Bush tea to the rescue. And he had another restless night. Before I went to sleep, I went in to check on him and found him a bed with a pillow draped over his face, shielding his hurt eye from the street light shining through the window. I sat on the edge of his bed and asked him how he felt. "You know, mama," he stirred, "you see this now? If I was singing instead of welding, none of this would have happened." The next day, my brother Gibson went with Nestor to the hospital, and the doctor removed the remaining sliver of metal embedded in his eye. White gave him some drops and sent him home. After that episode, Nestor wanted nothing more to do with welding. So Nestor had no trade. This my mother says, so he had no job, and he seemed to have no prospects. All he had was a very occasional gig playing music. One morning, a prosperous-looking Chinaman suddenly appeared at our doorstep, asking for Nestor, "What does a prosperous-looking Chinaman look like?" That's how interested. One prosperous-looking Chinaman appear on my doorstep. "Him not here," I told him. "You know when he'll be back? I want to give him a contract." Contract? "Oh, yes," I said. "A contract for what?" "For his music," he replied. "Oh," I said, getting all excited. "Oh." But Nestor wasn't there, and the man soon drove away in his fine motor car. Oh, I guess that's why he looked prosperous, because he was in a fine motor car. When Nestor returned that evening, he already met the man on the street, signed the contract, and been paid £5 for the rights to the song Judge Not, which was the first song he wrote and recorded. This was also the first big money Nestor ever got for recording work. This thing happens often. Hungry artists sell off them rights early, get exploited, and time goes on, and the beat goes on, right? Let us continue. Let me see where we are in this story. We're going to continue. In the joy and jubilation, in the joy and jubilation of that night, Nestor was generous with the £5 he'd been paid for the song. He gave me £2 over out it. My sister Enid, who was living with us at the time, he gave 10 shillings. To another woman also named Enid, who was staying with us from the country, he gave 5 shillings. Out of the £5, he kept only £2, 5 shillings for himself. She goes on to say, he gave with the heart and he would always made sure that his mama got her cut. Soon after that, we would occasionally hear the song Judge Not playing over the radio, and my heart would swell with pride that it had been written and performed by my one son, Wani, our one son. But I had my misgivings about the music world, and I shared them with Nesta. What especially worried about was that What I especially worried about was that the business Nesta was now involved in was one known for appeal to, which is the Jamaican patois word for men who crave the rare parts of other men over God-given woman flesh. There was laws in Jamaica about boogering at that time. And this is what so that is referencing. Remember, she's a barmaid and she's working in a bar, okay? So she sees some things. I told Nesta that in the dingy little bar where I worked, I myself had seen these well-dressed brown, high yellow and white men of posh St. Andrew neighborhood where I had once cleaned houses come prowling around at night. She has said this from then. Nothing new under the sun. I saw a documentary in recent times about the boys in Kingston who get turned out and they're on the streets. I forgot the name of the documentary. And she's basically describing the same thing in the 50s and 60s. Okay, it says here. She says, wait a minute. She says, only last week I told him of one of these same well-dressed white strangers who had stumbled into the bar drunk and began buying rounds for all hanger-ons and boys, befriending them and chatting them up with sweet mouth. That same man probably had his faithful wife sitting at home in the belly of a big St. Andrew house, waiting for him to come to her bed. And here he was roaming the stained back alleys and lanes of downtown Kingston, sniffing among the bad light of rat trap bars for other men. Merciful Father. The next day, one of the boys who had departed with the stranger returned to the bar and said, Miss Marley, you see that man who was here last night? You know what him is? What you say to me? I exclaimed, unable to believe my ears, unwilling to imagine that such a well-dressed gentleman would be on a mission of such nastiness. Nesta heard me out patiently, then it said, don't worry, mama. Nobody can make me do anything me don't want to. I said, yes, that was true, and tried to calm my fears. But deep inside my heart, I still fretted. You know, I am going to, we just have a little more to go. What we say, continue? We just have to continue. I continued working in the bar and going along with Mr. Taddy, even though we were still periodically fussing and fighting over his attempts to domineer periodically. Eventually, I got pregnant for him. So you pick and you pick. You wait till. Make we just continue, yeah, City. And he eased off a bit with the constant bully riding. In fact, I'm now quite certain that I had not, if I, no. In fact, I'm now quite certain that had I not gotten pregnant for Mr. Taddy and born him a child, our daughter Pearl, sooner or later, he would have big M'd her. So that was the impetus. That was the reason you got pregnant for him, bro. But once he saw me swollen with his child, his bullying attitude changed and his harsh manner softened. Pearl was born, and I brought her home for Mr. Taddy to go kitchicoo at and played with her in the crib like a doting father. But I was still not happy under his rough rule. I remember our father kind of lenient, right? Nestor was making his way in the world, and he was getting a name for himself. He was gone a lot on his music business, but he was still laying his head at home every night. I don't know why, as a mother, why she keeps saying that. I don't know. That's interesting. She keeps saying he keeps coming home, but I don't know. To me, it seems like she's saying it for a reason. I just don't know what the reason is. As for me, I was not content with my life. I wanted better. Mr. Taddy's rule, even though he had a newborn infant now between us, was still an oppression. Under pressure, under pressure. So I did what I have always done in times of trouble. Run. You're running and you're running. Now, I got down on my knees and began a mighty prayer every night for deliverance out of Babylon. Prayer had always been my constant staff. Night after night, I got down on bended knees and told Jay that if he would help me out of my predicament, I would serve him as long as he gave breath to draw. She said God heard her prayer and answered it. I found out one day that my sister Ivy in Delaware had written a letter to her niece, Nola, inviting her to come to America on a visa. I quickly wrote her sister Ivy and beseech her to invite me too. She did, and I got a visa to visit her in Delaware. Dear sister Ivy, me I beg you, do. And they do about 5 do invite me too. Sign your dearest sister, Sidella. Letter. Say, Mr. Taddy was against my going. Go figure. Go figure. Mr. Taddy never want you leave. But I told him it was only for a visit and that Enid would take care of Pearl, who was then 10 months old, and eventually he gave in grudgingly. I guess you can go. So it came that just as Nesta was breaking into the music business, I broke out of the clutches of Mr. Taddy and headed for America. Shortly after I left, Enid decided to return to 9 Mile, so Mr. Taddy moved in on top of her, like I had done with Ruth, and took possession of the Trenchtown government house. So she gone, Enid left with the baby. Where is Bob? Enid took Pearl and moved back to 9 Mile. Mr. Taddy brought Cicelyne, the baby mother. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Where his wife? Where his wife? No, he didn't. No, he didn't. And where is his wife? He brought Cicely. Remember the tear up note? The baby mother whose letter had sparked the fight between us to live with him in the government house where Nesta continued to stay occasionally. So before this point, you were like, Nesta came home every night. And then you left him for a visit. And now Nesta is occasionally coming back to the dwelling, but now Mr. Taddy and Cicelyne, the baby mother, is living there. By then, I was long gone and struggling to make a life in America. So you told them, let's recap, because that was a lot. Let's recap. So to recap, today, sometimes me I root for you, and sometimes me I wonder, huh? So you told them, including your son, that you're going for a visit, of which you know in your mind you ain't coming back. And then you left him. He's making his way. Like he's broke for 10 years. He's not really making his way. He's not making any money. So when we could now pick up on Rita's story, this whole poor Bob situation, there was a lot going on with him. He was exuding. His spirit may have been for as far as the eye can see, because Rita's not the only one who said that he would tell you a story and make you feel sorry for him. I think Lee Scratch Perry said the same thing. A lot of people said that he had that ability to make you feel his pain. And at this point, as we're seeing, he went through a lot. And your mother leaves thinking it's going to be 1, 2, 3. And now you're in the house with the man who was abusing her. And your younger sister went back to the country. And not long after this, his grandfather dies. So in an interview, if I can find it, if not, another time, right? They asked about that time period. And he says that his grandfather died and he didn't have a house to go back to. So by 1964, his mother leaves in 1962. By 1964, his grandfather dies. In 9 Mile, things are falling apart because you see that the siblings are going here, there, and everywhere. He doesn't have a home to go back to. It is in this space that Rita meets him. So hopefully that gives the conversation more context, more understanding. And in seeing him, she feels way more privileged. Even though her father's gone and her mother's gone, she has her aunt, she has a warm bed, she has a place to call home. She feels like she's more advantaged than he is, and she feels inclined to help him in this time. as he's also confiding her. So let's pick back up. That was a lot, but I had to read that whole chapter because it's the setup for the next one. All right.